Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss how discipline is mental freedom. So a lot of people will create stress and worry and negative emotions based around their nutrition. And often what it's related to in the sense of is not either getting the results you want or beating yourself up over making poor nutritional decisions. So we usually have, when we're dieting, and this is even if you're trying to gain weight, or if you're dieting or eating in a specific manner for a sport. So maybe you're not dieting for weight loss. You're dieting for, aesthetic composition. You're dieting for performance. You're dieting to gain muscle mass, but not overeat to where you're gaining body fat. It's just some kind of structured way of eating. So often, we either will believe that we are trying every day, all day, towards our goals, but yet we struggle with when we don't get results or we don't think we're getting results. And then we also struggle when we know we're making bad choices. So recently I was talking to somebody and they had just kind of started paying better attention to their food, and they had just started kind of resistance training. And they're only about, I'd say, maybe 6 weeks into the whole process, and they're saying how they haven't yet seen, significant changes to their physique. Well, that's just, 6 weeks is a very short amount of time. If you've been out of shape for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 6 weeks is way too narrow of a time to be wondering why things, quote-unquote, aren't working. And what I mean by this is they're very new to lifting, so they're getting stronger, but they can't see the physical change yet. And part of the reason why is they're just not strong enough yet to lift things that are heavy enough to cause muscle stress and damage. So if I gave someone, say, 3-pound dumbbells, and I wanted you to do lateral raises for 20 minutes straight. Okay, we're just raising the dumbbells out to your side, which works your shoulders. You're going to do lateral raises for 20 minutes straight with 3-pound dumbbells. That'll hurt. That'll burn your shoulders up. That'll annoy the shoulders a lot. But 3-pound dumbbells didn't tear and pull at the fibers of the tissues. You just accumulated a lot of work. You accumulated lactic acid. There's some other kind of annoyances in terms of processes the muscles go through. But you will have worked your muscle. But you won't have created physical damage stress that relates to shape change, that relates to a boost in metabolism. So often when people are brand new to lifting, they're just not simply strong enough yet to actually be able to create stress and damage to their body through weight training, which is the positive stress and damage, the damage that boosts our metabolism because our body has to try to recover from it, the damage that changes the shape of a muscle because the body has to adapt to the damage in the way in which we've damaged it. So there's a lot of people that will struggle often with, hey, I've been doing such and such program for 4, 8, 12, even 16 weeks, and wonder why they don't see great results. It's just too short of a time frame, and you're not strong enough yet. I wish it was a different answer, but even 16 weeks, if you think of that, that's only 4 months. You may have spent 4+ years out of shape, and you think that's going to be corrected in 4 months? Really? So it's kind of what are the realistic expectations? So oftentimes we get ourselves stressed over things like this, is we have a fake, false sense of expectations. Maybe we have a false sense of how well we're actually doing with the diet. So we think we have the feeling of being under the pressure of the diet every day, but we don't make good choices every day, do we? No, not all day, every day. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we will know why we made the mistake, and we unfortunately, in our mind, somehow it works to where we replace what we should have done with the excuse of why we didn't do it, and think that that's a one-to-one replacement. Okay, I know I was supposed to eat healthy, but I was really busy at work, so I didn't have the option. So they think that just excuses them from that meal that they were supposed to have. No, it doesn't. The reason why you didn't have the meal doesn't mean anything. The only reason why that might be of some importance is so that way you can know how to correct it and adjust in the future. But just because you know why you didn't do something doesn't mean that it replaces the fact you didn't do it. Does that make sense? So I may have known, maybe I got in an accident. Like maybe I was lifting weights and I kind of did something dumb and I hurt my leg. And I might know exactly what I did, but my leg is still hurt, right? So just because I know what I did wrong doesn't take away the hurt. So just because I know why I missed a meal doesn't take away the fact I missed the meal. Just because I know I should have had, say chicken and rice, not the pizza, that doesn't replace the fact that I had the pizza. So too often we replace what we should have done with the reasons why we didn't do it and thinking that that's okay or that it's an equal replacement. It is not at all. So we have to be honest about our adherence and how well we're actually following the parameters of the diet. So even though we feel the pressure of the diet every day, it doesn't mean we're following the diet every day. And we need to recognize the difference between those. And then also, you can create stress in dieting just by, you know what you should do, but you're having a really hard time doing it. And there are a lot of various reasons. We're going to talk about that in this podcast. There might be reasons that you need to toughen up and control. But then there might be reasons in which that are outside of your control, and maybe there needs to be a change to the structure of your diet. So sometimes you might need to change, but then sometimes the diet might need to change. And how do we know kind of what's the difference between those? And that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast is by being disciplined in the sense of tracking our adherence, tracking how well we follow our rules. If we're disciplined in the act of tracking, I'm not even saying you have to do it. I'm just saying you have to track whether you do or don't do it. But in the discipline of tracking what your efforts, like what you actually do, you can get mental freedom because you'll have clarity over what the issue is that's holding you back. So rather than constantly hitting these cycles of, where like you do really well on a diet, you lose some pounds, but then all of a sudden something gets in the way, you gain the pounds back. Maybe you try that diet again, it works again, you lose some weight, but something comes up in the way, and all of a sudden you gain the weight back. Then maybe you get frustrated, you try this new diet. And the new diet promises you all the things that you want to hear. You try that diet, it works initially, you lose some weight, something happens, then all of a sudden you gain the weight back. So we go through those cycles. And what I want to talk about today is how to end those cycles. How do we finally just figure out what the hell is holding us back? And how do we move on? Okay? So, what I want to talk about today is that idea of tracking your efforts. So I've talked about in past podcasts that I have charts that I'll have clients fill out. And I call them smiley face charts. Because if they eat a good meal, the meal as good defined by our program. So it would be whatever you define as a good meal based on your diet structure. So you don't even have to follow the same diet as somebody else to use this paper. It's just if you had a good meal based on what your rules of good are, you get a smiley face. If you have food, but you have bad food, you have the food that you shouldn't have had. Okay, maybe it wasn't enough food, or it was too much food, or it was the wrong food. You get a frowny face. And then if you skip the meal, you have a blank. So you don't get a frowny face or a smiley face, you get nothing. So, because you ate nothing. So what you would do is most clients, I tend to promote them to eat about 5 times a day. And what that represents is a breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a small snack somewhere in the morning and a small snack somewhere in the afternoon. And that tends to be a pretty good structure for most people. There are people we do more meals, there's people we do less meals. But let's just go with the example of 5 meals a day. So if I have 5 meals a day times 7 days a week, I would have 35 meals that I would want to be accountable to, of whether I made a good choice, a bad choice, or I made a choice not to eat. So out of 35 meals, I started doing these charts, these smiley face charts, years and years and years ago. And I did them with hundreds of clients. I don't know the exact number, but I'm absolutely certain it was 200, 300, 400 plus. So it's a significant amount of people. And what I found was, by analyzing all their papers and seeing the results we got, and yada, 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 was that out of the 35 possible meals that they could eat well every week, if they were able to eat 32 or more with smiley faces, they got really good results. So if they had, say, like 32 out of 35 means they messed up 3 times that week. So they would have either had a blank, meaning they missed a meal, or they would have had a frowny face, meaning they ate the wrong food, up to 3 times. So it could have been 0. They were 35 out of 35. They could have made 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, or 3 mistakes, leading up to that 32 out of 35. What I found was anywhere in that window, people got pretty much the same results. So now this is for most goals, excluding extreme goals. So if somebody wants to get sub 10% body fat and step on a bodybuilding stage, they need 35 out of 35. But I'm talking about most people getting to what we consider as a fabulous beach body, just the body that you'd love to have like all year round. So that would be something where like 32 out of 35 was just as good as 35 out of 35. So what I found was, when I was a younger trainer, I was very intense on myself, and I would push that onto my clients to where I expected myself to be perfect in diets. Because if I truly wanted the results, I was going to truly put in the effort. So I would do diets where I was 35 out of 35 for months on end. So I've done 10-month diet before where I didn't make a single frowny face. I didn't make a single blank. I mean, this is some crazy discipline. But what I found was it wasn't even necessary. So damn, do I wish I would have known this when I was younger. But 32 out of 35 pretty much got really good results. So what that showed me is people don't have to be perfect. I didn't have to be perfect. I was allowed to make a mistake or two here and there. Or maybe go out on a date or go out with friends and have a bad meal once a week. And that didn't seem to really set anybody back. So 32 out of 35 seemed to be really cool. Like, it worked really well. Then I found that about 30 out of 35. So if someone got, say, 29, 30, or 31 out of 35, they got, like, pretty good results. They were definitely moving forward. But if those people were able to bump up to that 32 or more, they tended to get even better results. So there tended to be a difference. So there wasn't much of a difference from 32 to 35, but there was a difference from 29 to 32. There started becoming like this separation of people who said, oh, I'm trying really hard, but, I'm not really getting the progress I want. And we would look at their physique, we'd look at what's going on and say, yeah, you know what, you are moving kind of slower than we'd expect. Oh, wow, when we look at your adherence chart, we're only hitting about 29 or 30 every week. Maybe we can get that to 32. Then all of a sudden, when they were able to get to 32, we got the results that we wanted. Then I found that people at 28 or less out of 35, they really didn't move forward much. So they didn't fall behind. I never really went and analyzed lower than 28. So I don't know, at say 20 out of 35 means you're at least standing still, but less than that means you're going backwards. I just knew that at 28 or less, you weren't going to get anything. It didn't really seem to be moving anywhere. You were going to feel the pressure of your diet. You were going to feel the stress of your diet, but you weren't making enough good choices to actually make that diet worth doing. So, if you would like this chart, by the way, feel free to shoot us an email at brutalironjim@gmail.com. Now, the benefit and the cool part of this chart was I found out that perfect wasn't necessary. So the goal no longer was perfect. And I actually promoted my clients not to be perfect. Because if they got into the expectation that perfect was necessary, if they made 1 or 2 or even 3 mistakes, they would feel mentally defeated, they'd feel stressed, they would beat themselves up, and they'd question whether they want to continue or not. But the ridiculous part was that if they made 1, 2, or 3 mistakes, it didn't hold them back at all. So they had all this emotional stress and this worry and this feeling bad about themselves for no reason. And that's what I want to get across in this podcast is, by knowing numbers, by knowing your adherence, you'll know whether you should be worried or not. You'll know whether the stress you're feeling is valid or not. So when I had somebody who expected perfect, and they would get it for a week or 2, then the next week they'd make 2 mistakes. They'd be perfect another week. Then the next week they'd make maybe even 3 mistakes. And they would always come in bummed and sad and, I'm just so mad at myself and da-da-da-da-da. And then I'd always have to remind them, I'm like, what the hell are you doing to yourself here? Stop beating yourself up. You're fine. Our window was 32 out of 35. So stop setting 35 out of 35 as your goal. It's unrealistic to do that continuously. And you're only going to hurt yourself because you're setting up negative emotions. You're going to defeat yourself. You're just beating yourself up. You're going to ruin your own process by not understanding what's realistic and not sticking to parameters that I am telling you are the true ones to do. So they were holding themselves to a standard that was absolutely unnecessary and unproductive. So that was important for them to know. Then, on the flip side, I had people who would come in and they'd make 10, 11, 12 mistakes each week. So maybe for that whole week, they might only have 25 meals right out of 35. And then they would feel bummed and stressed, and I don't know why I'm not moving forward in my goals. I'm trying so hard, and I just don't seem to be losing weight. And that's where, unfortunately, I had to tell them that they were trying hard, but they needed to try harder. So I have seen it with tons of clients in every life scenario possible. People who've been married, not married. People who've had kids, not had kids. People who've had up to 6 kids. People who've only had 1 kid. I've worked with people who've worked 2, 3 jobs. I've worked with people who've been in every life situation you can imagine. Okay, every profession. I've worked with nurses, cops, people who work 2 weeks at night shifts, 2 weeks at day shifts. So every schedule you can think of. And what I found was that in every one of those scenarios, if somebody had everything balanced right, in terms of they were planning ahead, they prepared, they had controlled their emotions, they controlled cravings and all this other things, that it was possible for people to be at 32 out of 35 in any life situation. Okay, now this is going to be hard for some of you to accept, because you're going to say, well, not my situation, you don't know how my day is, or you don't know what my life is like. Yeah, I do. Okay, I've worked with over 1,000 clients. So let that sink in. I've worked with over 1,000 people. You are not so special, okay? Somebody has done what you're trying to do, and they've done it well. The cool part is I know how they did it well. So if you're struggling with how to do it well, shoot us an email and I'll tell you, okay? And then also, you can do what we're going to describe in this podcast, and you can know for yourself. So, what we want to do is we want to track our discipline. We want to track our adherence. We want to see how many mistakes we're making per week. We need to do this so that way we need to find out, and this is how we're going to find out, whether we are the problem for why we're not getting results or why we feel stressed and worried all the time, or whether the diet we're trying to follow is the problem. So too often people select diets that are bullshit, and the people who write them are assholes, and oh my gosh, I'm just so mad at the industry sometimes. People promote absolute bullshit, and they promise you the world just so they can collect your money. And those people are going to have to deal with consequences of their actions. But unfortunately, you're having to deal with the consequences as well. So some diets that are promoted, that are very famous, are absolute shit. And they do not work well in terms of matching it to a lifestyle. So do they match the science of weight loss? Sure. But can somebody actually do the damn structure that they're offering? No. So I had a lady I was talking to recently, and she was given a diet parameter. She weighs 150 some pounds, and she's very athletic, very thin. She's actually tall. So, and she was given a diet structure of only eating like 1,200 calories a day from a very famous program that she paid money for. They were telling her to eat 1,200 calories, which is absolutely stupid. Okay? Absolutely stupid. She was previously eating 2,300 to 2,400 and was holding her weight. She tried to follow their parameters, and all of a sudden, what do you know, it didn't work out well. So you get cravings, you get super tired, you're fatigued all the time. So those people who wrote that diet used some kind of bullshit calculation stuff. They didn't look at individuals. They're just selling bullshit programs that are supposed to fit the masses, even though everyone's a little bit different. We all have different metabolisms. We all have different reasons why our bodies run at different speeds. So what we need to do is we need to track our adherence. That's going to let us know, are we the problem or is the diet the problem? And then, once you know that, you can identify what the problem is and then how you can fix it. Okay? So, here's the thing. If we know that we are not hitting our adherence goals, we're not even getting at least 28 out of 35, we need to find out why. Why am I not getting that adherence? Okay? Now, if you are adhering well, if you're getting 32 out of 35, but you're not getting results, then your numbers are off. Your diet is wrong. Okay? If you do fall into that window, shoot us an email, brutalironGym@gmail.com. Send me a chart or some kind of proof that you're actually tracking yourself. So don't just tell me I'm doing everything right until you actually track it, okay? And find out for true fact, because it'll be the first thing I ask you to do. So do it yourself first before you email me. But if you're following, for say 4 weeks your diet, and you can get 32 out of 35 right for 4 weeks in a row, and you're not getting results, email us. We'll analyze your diet, we'll tell you what's off about it, and we'll fix it for you, okay? Now, if you're less than 32 out of 35, and we're not doing well with adherence, we need to find out why. Is it from poor planning and poor preparation? Are we just not having the right foods ready when we need them? So that's what you want to look into. What's the most common reason why I make mistakes? You know, I might skip a meal because I didn't have an easy meal planned. Or I didn't want to cook a good healthy meal at home because I was tired, so I got fast food instead. So you need to record when you don't follow your plan. When you get a frowny face or a blank, when you make a bad decision, you need to find out why. What was the reason for that decision? You need to find the most repetitive reasons that you tend to make a mistake for. And then you need to address them. Okay? It could be poor planning, poor preparation. It could be having extreme cravings. So maybe you're like, I'm following my plan, but holy crap, at the end of the day, I'm just so miserable and I'm hungry and I just eat everything under the sun. And if you find out that that's true, well then, hey, maybe your calories are too low for your diet. Or your calories are mistimed. Maybe you're doing some kind of eating only in certain time blocks, and the time blocks don't match when your body actually needs those calories. Maybe you're unable to handle temptations. So you're not really that starving, but, the kids have chips and cookies in the house, and, somebody had a birthday party, and you're just having trouble saying no. So you need to build up willpower. You need to build up discipline of saying no to things. So that's what you would look for. That you'd maybe go read articles about that, read books about that. Go find your answer for that. Go address that. What you'll find is if you can address that, all of a sudden your diets go better and you lose the weight that you want. Maybe you have an emotional connection to food. Maybe that's how you deal with stress at work. You get home at night, you're stressed at work, so you sit down and you have to have a glass of wine. Just without that wine, I just can't relax. Well, that's not good. That's the definition of alcoholism. Okay, you're dependent on alcohol for a happy state of mind. That is not a healthy thing. Okay, you need to find other mechanisms. You need to maybe walk, go for a light physical activity. That can sometimes clear the mind. You can talk. Maybe talk to a family member, a loved one, spouse, whatever. Just talk through some of the emotions you're wrestling with that day, and that can help. Maybe picking up a hobby. So maybe putting together puzzles, maybe picking up a musical instrument, maybe doing a diary. You can write in a journal every night about what stressed you out at work. Just get these things off your mind. So all alcohol does, alcohol just numbs your mind. That's not healthy, okay? That's not even healthy physically, but I'm talking about emotionally, mentally. That's not a healthy way to live. So you shouldn't be dependent on alcohol for mental clarity and mental health. You need to find a different way of doing that. So that'll help you as well. Then you find if you have a social connection to food, so maybe every time you go out with friends, you just have to eat that extra fun food that everybody else is having. No, you don't. So I've gone to places with friends before, and I've eaten the dorky salad when everybody else was having Mexican food or something that actually tasted probably well compared to my salad. Or I've gone to house parties where I took my own food with me because I knew that there'd be food there and I knew I was going to be hungry, but I didn't want to eat crap, so I just took my own food. I took what I wanted to eat. So you just have to take ownership of your choices, and you might have to learn to be more disciplined in those situations. So sometimes you need to get tougher and be more disciplined. Sometimes the parameter of the diet is too harsh and it doesn't match your body and your lifestyle. So that's causing problems. Maybe you have emotional and mental disorders or issues. So I've had people before where they've gotten overweight. Like there's females, I've talked about this in a past podcast, but I've worked with females who were sexually abused or sexually harassed, and they became overweight as a way to protect themselves. So nobody was going to try to abuse them if they were overweight because they deemed themselves to be unattractive. Well, that's kind of a shitty way to live, and that absolutely sucks. So then when they want to try to lose weight, sometimes they self-sabotage that process because they're afraid of what might happen if they lose weight again. So there's a lot of reasons why people struggle with diets. And if you find yourself struggling with a diet, you need to find out what that reason is. Now, sometimes exposing what that reason is can hurt. It can bring up memories you don't want to think of, or it can just kind of make you accountable to a whole new process of things. And sometimes we just don't want to uncover that. So uncover that harsh truth. Because we are afraid that it's going to hurt. The problem is, if we don't uncover that harsh truth, we're already hurting. Okay? We're already hurting because we're not happy with the way we physically look. We're already hurting because we're feeling stress or worried or anxiety over not being able to complete these diets the way that we really want. We're not believing in ourselves to be successful. We don't have self-confidence. We're living in a world of hurt already. So, your choice is, do I track my adherence? Do I find out what I do well and what I do wrong? Do I then work on what I do wrong so I can eventually be happy? Or do I hide from the truth and stay unhappy forever? So too often we get comfortable being unhappy, and we're afraid to go a few layers deeper into unhappiness to eventually be able to overcome that mountain and come out happy on the other side. So don't live in a comfortable unhappy. Okay? Be willing to expose what the issue might be. Be willing to open yourself up to all possibilities, good and bad, so that we can finally tackle what the reason is that's holding you back. You can take control of your physical health. That takes control of your mental and emotional health. And you can live the life that you've really wanted. Okay? So, we're here to help. We have the charts that we can give you. We can give you any kind of assistance you need. When you find out what is holding you back, what your repetitive mistakes are, please reach out to us and let us know. Like I said, I've helped over 1,000 people. I promise whatever your problem is, somebody else has done it. We often way falsely believe that we are the only people that deal with a certain issue. Absolute horseshit. So we all have demons. We all have challenges in life. And there's a lot of people that struggle with the same thing you're struggling with. So don't feel alone. You are not alone. There are ways to address it. There's ways to correct it. There's ways we can help. Okay? So if you find out what the problem is that you're struggling with, shoot us an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. We'll tell you what's been successful for people in the past. We'll tell you what's been unsuccessful so you can avoid those. We'll help you in your journey. Okay? So please reach out to us. You are not alone. We are here to help. Cool. So hopefully today's podcast gave you some food for thought. And hopefully it can give you kind of motivation to be a little more disciplined and track your adherence so you can finally nip this thing in the bud and get control over what's going on with your life. Okay? So please put this to use, and please reach out to us if you need any help. So if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world's going to be. So if you know anyone that is struggling with nutrition, just send them the link to the URL to this podcast. Don't have to send anything else. Don't have to say anything. Just send them the link. Okay? See if it'll help them. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future podcasts, we would love to hear from you. So the podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can reach us at our email at brutaliirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.